मित्रांनो, तुमचा सगळ्यांचं स्वागत आहे वामन मॅटर्स वरती. आणि आज आपल्या बरोबर आहे कॅनडामधली प्रथम म्हणजे सर्वोच्च 100 मधली सगळ्यात एकदम ताकदवर महिला, ज्या तिकडच्या महिला व्यावसायिका आहेत. आणि इतक्या कमी वयात त्यांनी भरपूर काय काय मिळवलं त्यांच्या आयुष्यामध्ये. आणि आज आपण त्यांच्याशी महत्त्वपूर्ण विषयावरती बोलणार आहोत. एक म्हणजे व्यवसाय आणि त्यांच्या काही आयुष्याबद्दल, ज्याच्यामुळे लोकांना समजेल की काय त्यांच्या आयुष्यात अत्यंत चांगलं आहे, म्हणजे तुम्हा सर्वांना समजेल आणि पुढच्या येणाऱ्या सर्व पिढींना हे खूप उपयोगाचं ज्ञान होईल. सो बेली, let us start from here that your TED talk, okay, it got 1 million views. So that is really a big achievement in itself.
Actually, it's over 2 million now.
Okay, 2 million or 2 million. Okay, so it got 2 million views, and when it got that much views, and when you gave that talk, so what was the difference between the results that you got? Means what was the thought process at that time? Okay, when you gave the talk and the talk got over and you got down from the stage, and now 2 million views. So the
Yeah.
result seems to be really amazing and very means out of imagination actually. So
Yeah,
what do
it's
you
really
see in
great.
these two polls? What is your analyzation?
hmm It is really great, and I'm really glad that even though I gave that TED Talk at the beginning of 2017, and my research has come such a far way since then, that everything I'm saying in it is actually still what I believe. So I'm lucky. I'm not lucky. This was intentional. That the message is still relevant today, and I think that's partially because I actually was quite strategic about designing the talk. So, unlike other TED speakers, because if you're a TED speaker, you really actually just need to have a great idea. You don't necessarily need to be a public speaker. I feel that I had the added benefit, and in this part, I was lucky that I also am a public speaker. So I was actually thinking about how do I design a talk that's for the TED audience. And I actually wasn't thinking about the audience that was in the room because there was hundreds in the room, but I was thinking, no, this is meant to be an idea that spreads. So it needs to be designed to be something that can be shared on YouTube. And so even when I was choosing the name of the talk, I wanted to have I wanted to have something people would search that connected to my message. So, for example, it's called "Is Social Media Hurting Your Mental Health?" as opposed to say "Practice Safe Social," because I know that people are going to search social media and mental health. And then even when I was designing the slides, being a public speaker, I knew that if I had things like steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, that the things people are going to take a picture of are the slides with all 4 steps. And still, I get a lot of screenshots of those slides when they go up. So I would say that I did think quite intentionally about how this could be shared beyond the audience I was speaking to, because that's the whole point of TED for me, was to get this idea out there. But it is amazing. It grows exponentially. So now we're over 2 million views. And I think really what that means to me is that we've touched on something. We, as in, I just started a new organization called Safe Social, but I knew in my research, it's kind of why I got into it in the first place. I could see that this was going on around me. And I knew that in this talk, it touches people because they're going through it too. Everybody has a relationship with social media these days. Even if they're not on it themselves, it's usually for a reason. So I find in my work that people can relate in some way and they always have a story to share with me. So I think that that's part of the reason why it continues to spread.
So there is a thing that I want to know. Even people are also interested that you are the owner and founder of Skills Camp. Okay, Skills Camp, which works on soft skills, not hard skills at all. Does it is the responsibility of also schools, okay, schools, when it comes to giving skills, because not all are privileged to get all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to say about that, about school's approach?
Yeah, so I do have two sides of my life right now. One is the practicing safe social media, and mental health. And then my first business, and still my main sort of daily activity, is with Skills Camp, which is a soft skills training company. So we partner with a lot of organizations mostly, and a lot of higher ed institutions and government to build soft skills in their staff and students. And this could be skills like resilience or emotional intelligence, public speaking, communication, cross cultural communication, and all this sort of stuff. And I actually have to agree with you that even in the most developed countries, we're not doing enough to develop soft skills in the education system. And that's part of the whole reason why Skills Camp exists in the first place. And I would say that in my perfect world, we don't exist anymore because it is part of the schooling system where you are teaching kids things not just like the history of our country, but how do you talk about the history of our country with when you're talking to a group that might be hurt by it? This is emotional intelligence. This is communication skills. It's just like this added layer. How do you teach kids to deal with failure, bounce back from it, teach them actual, real strategies for handling conflict? I do this, so I know it can be done, and I wish it also was part of the curriculum in education for sure. So I have to agree with you there.
This question which is there in my heart, and the reason means the question is that today is a really historic day for our country. So the reason is that on 22 July 1947, the Constituent Assembly of India accepted the tricolor, the national flag of our nation. In thinking about this, there is a question that I see that uh, a country is shaped by industrial policies, okay, and there are many industries in our country. So so does it really matter that a employees shape the life of an entrepreneur, or it only matters that only entrepreneur shapes the life of an employee? Is it does it go from both the sides, or does it go from only one way? So
Are
what is
you
your observation?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you asking, does an employee shape the life of an entrepreneur? Yeah, well, we certainly can't do anything without our teams. So, in that respect, they shape the direction of a company. And vice versa. I hope that a good leader would also help guide more so. I feel like shape is like you're almost this mastermind creating the reality, but I feel perhaps more so a good leader would be just guiding them to find the life they want to live, and hopefully that's in line with the mission of the company that they work for.
Okay. One thing that I want to know means I have read about you, ma'am, is that at the age of 21 you gave a you were a guest lecturer for I think so MBA school
Hmm.
or college. How was
Yes.
your experience at that time? And please tell us along with the context what happened there, and suddenly a lecturer at such a young age, because at such age people are in colleges, students, they are called
Hmm.
students, but you
Yes.
become a guest lecturer at that age. So how it all became true?
True. That's funny. I forgot that that was in the bio, but how it happened was I was 21, and I believe I would have graduated my BA, so my undergraduate, when I was 21 as well. So it was just around the time of either just after, just before graduation. And I was actually in my fourth year, I had already been working. So I was mostly like ready to get out. Like I had, in my opinion, that means the school succeeded if I'm ready to go be out and successful in the world. But I was kind of eager to go, and I had already been working and speaking in my role for years. So that guest lecture actually came through a mentor of mine who was friends with a professor at the university. She was teaching an MBA class, and he had known about my work. At this time, it was more in, actually, still very much like digital community and literacy and all that sort of stuff. And I had met with her, we talked about her class, and I had given her some of my ideas on the topic, which was actually, I believe, digital citizenship. and what are the elements of being a digital citizen, and how can you kind of contribute to communities, but also how do digital communities shape policy. It was so long ago, I barely remember what I talked about. I'd have to look up the slides. But in our conversation, she said, "I love this. Can you come and lecture my class?" And it wasn't like a whole course, just a guest lecture. But it was awesome because you're going in with ideas, and when you get to, I found when I was doing my master's, and certainly when I was going and when I work with masters of students now and PhD, you get to this new level of conversation that's less, it doesn't always have to be practical. MBAs are fairly practical, but we're also talking kind of big concepts. So no one knew my age. That's another thing, is I didn't come out and tell them. We just talked ideas, and maybe now they might remember it if they saw it, but yeah, they didn't know my age then.
12 July 2018, you said that I will never forget that date. You become an entrepreneur. So what was the thought process behind it? Because I have seen that many people are really comfortable to be an employee, but there are a few people who are also comfortable genuinely to become an entrepreneur. So what was the thought process, or was there something that you wanted to bring something out of box into the society?
Yes, definitely. I certainly did not grow up saying that I wanted to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. I actually actively resisted it for a while because I didn't want the responsibility. But when I was working at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada, I was working primarily in a role that was responsible for digital community, but I was working within the Department of Student Affairs, which is responsible for everything outside of the classroom in a university. So that's things like career centers and health and wellness departments and student learning support and housing and all that stuff. And it was very clear to me that the students who were using these services, such as things like resume workshops or going to stress management workshops, stuff like this, they were more successful, but the reality was and still is that most students don't use these services. And so then this kind of spiraled over years. I could see, okay, clearly this works. There was a lot of research coming out from the Canadian government at the time about the skills gap in Canada and a potential reason for it being a lack of essential skills or soft skills, like we talked about. There was also a lot of employer research, which is now even more so than it was 4 years ago, saying the most important skills we look for are the ability to communicate well and the ability to work well with others. And so over time, it was kind of becoming clear to me that these are the skills that I'm seeing make young adults more successful. And these are the skills that are clearly wanted and needed. And they're not being developed in the classroom. And I knew that firsthand too, because I was in the classroom setting. So again, I didn't really say to myself, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I don't care really what the business is, but I saw this problem and I felt that I was the perfect person to solve the problem because of my very unique career history, which combined elements of, and so in terms of what I do now, which is educating on soft skills and speaking and teaching and kind of curriculum design and that sort of stuff. I had the marketing background in terms of sales and telling our story and getting business. I also used to work in TV media, so in terms of how to gain media and how to get press and how to, again, tell our story in an interesting way. I had been doing public speaking, so in terms of engaging an audience, like as a teacher should be doing, in my opinion, I already had that kind of background coming in, and then the probably the most important was that I was working in that department where we were quite literally helping these departments develop that curriculum. We were helping them develop programming like essentially soft skills programming for the university. So if you put it all together, there was this problem. People need these skills. They need to learn it in interesting ways. This is lasting into adulthood. Adults still have the same problems. I think I have this unique history to be able to design learning and pedagogy based on, working in higher ed. And I think that I can also deliver it and I think I can also sell it. So you put it all together and we formed Skills Camp. But even Skills Camp, in the first year, we were really just testing and iterating and seeing what workshops worked and how we would brand ourselves. And then I had actually worked full time at Ryerson University while building up Skills Camp. And I probably did that for 2.5 years before I went full time. So everyone has their own journey.
This question, which is there in my thought, that many entrepreneurs in India have lost their lives due to wrong government policies when it comes to about starting our own business. So, are there any best policies in your country which you feel that when you become, means you are entrepreneur right now? So, which are the best policies that you feel that are really that will really nurture for
Mhm.
business? So, is there
Sorry, can you
anything in
tell
your
me
mind?
can you tell
Hmm.
me more about that? What do you mean people are losing their lives?
Okay, okay. So, in India, many people need licenses when they want to start business, and when it comes to license, they need to bribe many government officers, including sometimes ministers also. So this is the fact, and a very big company employer, he did suicide few years back due to income tax issues, like the income tax officers troubling him. So this that was the context behind asking this question, that what are the best policies in your country. Because Canada is a developed country at the end, which is helping for entrepreneurs to grow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'm not an expert on small business policy at all,
Mhm.
but I can
Mhm.
share some of the things that helped me early on. And I mean, it sounds like you have a bigger problem on your hands, which is that the people need to unite and oust the government if they're that corrupt. But I can tell you the services that helped me were things like I remember this program that was called Starter Company, and it was actually run by the city of Toronto. And it was a 10-week course that where you had to apply and you had to say kind of what your business idea was and how far along you are, and then it would be a 10-week course on how to start and run a business, including things like financials and legal and marketing and sales and all this sorts of stuff. And at the end of it, if you went through the 10 weeks, you got a $5,000 grant. So this really helped my business because I was bootstrapping. So I didn't want to take a loan that was, $40,000 to get going, but because I was teaching and speaking, I could actually just build it and I could deliver it and then get that money and then save it and then kind of keep growing it. All I really had to give time was time. So programs like that helped me a lot.
So you have given lectures to you have also dealt with students on regarding soft skills. So what is the crisis when it comes to students regarding skills you have in your observation?
What is the crisis?
Yeah, which are the main skills that students don't know and they feel very difficult to cope with it, or to understand and go ahead with that skills?
I find where I live, probably the skill that most needs to be built up is probably resilience, because understandably, just generationally, a lot of parents today want their kids to not go through the same difficulties that they went through, but kids actually need a bit of hardship so that they can learn intentionally, hopefully, how to handle difficulties in a healthy way. So I'd say resilience.
Okay, you are a very famous entrepreneur, and every successful person or an individual has his or own fears. So, which is the fear in your life? If you are comfortable, please share it with people.
Mhm. I have a fear of heights, but I mean, I suppose like I didn't grow up too wealthy, so I don't really ever want to go back there. That's pretty much it.
Does spirituality play a role in your life? as you are an entrepreneur and you deal with many people, how does spirituality play a role in your life?
Um, I'd say I respect it. I'd say I'm technically, if you really wanted to give it a title, I'd be qualified as agnostic, as in I believe that you can neither prove nor deny anything. So I'm open to all possibilities in that I actually find it kind of liberating because anytime people say things to me like this is what they believe, I think, yeah, maybe it's true, maybe. So it doesn't really play a role in my day to day, but at the same time, if you really wanted to get really philosophical, I suppose everybody has some kind of spirituality and they just call it something different. Some people follow, their version of a god, and some people follow money, and some people follow like, friendships or whatever that might be love. I'm sure that's a form of spirituality as well.
You were how was your childhood, means which people influenced your life when you were small and in your teens especially, so how were that days?
I had a great childhood. I think have my family is separated, and but they separated probably when I was like 2, so I don't really remember life any other way. I also have 5 sisters, so 3 sisters and 2 stepsisters. So let me tell you, they teach you resilience very quickly because they don't care about anything. and in my teen years, I actually had a fairly one of those sisters was fairly influential in my life because she was much older, 7 years older, and she fortunately when she was a teenager and then when she was a young adult and I was a teenager, she never said like, "Oh my gosh, my sister, you can't hang out with us, blah blah blah." She actually always invited us along. So I was, 7 hanging out with 15-year-olds and she was had to watch us because my mom was a single mom at the time. So she actually was great, a great role model, and really brought us along. And I've taken that into my work today when I work with teenagers and I talk to them like adults. And I don't expect them to behave like adults because I know their brain is not developed in the same way, but I treat them with the same respect that I treat adults.
Which are the books or talks, apart from your talk, okay, which are the books and talks that you will love to recommend people so
Mhm,
that they will also tap the potential that you have within you, the
mhm.
infinite potential I'm talking about?
Thanks. I recommend a few. Right now, I'm recommending everybody reads or watches Robin DiAngelo's guest lecture on white fragility in terms of race relations. I'm also recommend Thinking Fast and Slow about brains and kind of thought systems and why people react the way that they act. Those are two that have stuck with me recently.
Which is the one thought or the major incident of life that always gave you hope that yes, there is a meaning to your life, and how you have made your life sustainable psychologically, that yes, I want to get up the next day and work and meet many people and be energetic. What are those things? Please share us.
Yes, what motivates me?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that is
so
only.
mm, I think two things motivate me. I kind of have a selfless and a selfish motivation. So my selfish motivation is that I have a vision board. Actually, funny enough, you can kind of see it on the wall over there. The vision board is full of this life that I see for myself, and with my fiance and my family, and I want to go places with them, and I want to be able to take them across the world or wherever it might be. So I have this vision, and that kind of motivates me every day to make that happen. And then my selfless motivation is I'm also very motivated by teenagers. Funny enough that we were just talking about that. I find them incredibly smart and fresh and impressionable, and at least here, they really are motivated by doing good. And so I'm motivated to create a world that lets them do that, that kind of like helps them thrive, whether it's, through safe social or soft skills. But I am motivated by by teenagers, pretty much.
That during your school days, and means at this age, and when you see back at that time, uh, which was the subject that you didn't like, and what you thought that this could have been taught better?
hmm Well, I went to Catholic school. I'm not sure that I would have chosen that for myself, but I think religion class could have been taught better. I mean, they really get you young. Like my favorite religion class was world religions, and that didn't happen until grade 11. But I'd say my favorite classes, and I also went to an arts high school as a vocal music major, but I also liked math and science classes. So I felt that I had a very well-rounded educational experience. In general, I think mostly everything can be taught better because when you're in this like academic stream, it's still, a lot of education is still just people speaking at you for hours on a day and you expecting to take notes and then go memorize that. And I don't think really very, very few things in life require you to listen for 3 hours and regurgitate. So I am more, which means we need smaller class sizes, there's more funding so that we can actually start designing all learning for different learning styles, like visual learners, tactile, being able to introduce that to the classroom. And the funny thing is, this does happen, but guess where it happens? Private schools. Private schools where people are paying ridiculous amounts of money have small class sizes, experimentation, and all of these sorts of visual and tactile experiences. So thank you
Okay,
for this
thank you so much.
interview. And
Yes, yes,
poor
thank you
timing,
so much.
but I appreciate the interview and I had a great time discussing this. So